everyone, I'm Kurt Bachman. Welcome back to The Ultimate Dish. Today we have a special guest, our very own Escoffier Chef Instructor, Florian Tetart. Originally from Lille, France, Chef Florian has spent many years perfecting his craft in some of the world's finest kitchens. His journey has taken him from top-rated restaurants across Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Tokyo to local bakeries in the United States. One of his standout roles was serving as the chef de cuisine pastry at EXTERNSHIP in Hong Kong, a Michelin-starred restaurant where he pushed the boundaries of pastry and baking. This experience, along with many others, has shaped Chef Florian's commitment to delivering the highest quality in everything he creates. In 2019, his dedication earned him the title of Pastry Chef of the Year from GQ Taiwan. Now, Chef Florian is based in Boulder, Colorado, where he shares his wealth of knowledge as an Escoffier Chef Instructor in Baking and Pastry Arts. He's passionate about helping others learn, welcoming questions, and embracing mistakes as part of the journey. So join us today as we chat about the key qualities that are essential for success in today's pastry industry, what it's like to teach at Escoffier, and so much more. And there he is. Good morning, Chef. How are you?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
This is so
We're happy to be here.
serendipitous for me because you're on the other side of the campus.
Yeah.
I'm next to your pastry class where you
Mhm.
should be teaching right now, but
Yes,
thank
true.
you, thank you so much. We see each other so often in the
Yeah.
hallways and in the classrooms, but it's really an honor to have you on the show and just relax for an hour and spend
Mhm.
some time talking about you. Typically, you're in the classroom. I'm grateful that we found someone to cover for you. Your students are walking by my
Mhm.
office, but tell us just real quickly how it's going so far. How's this new group of students? And we'll start off with the education side, and then we'll
Mhm.
dive into you.
So, well, it's going great. I have a great group of students right now. Yeah, we move on our second block about 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So now we are in week two. We're doing a lot of cake on this block, so they are very excited to do American cake style. We're gonna carve cake, we're gonna do wedding cake, a lot of little project like this on the side. So they are very excited.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Can we talk a little bit about your and the theme here is building the roots of excellence, right?
Mhm.
Let's talk about your upbringing. It's not terribly different than mine. Mine with a German pastry chef
Mhm.
father, and yours with a French pastry chef in France.
Mhm.
Anyone who's listening can Google you very quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
But tell us a little bit about the town in the region, because that's so important in France,
Mhm.
where you grew up, and I believe there's a little bit of a blend of French and Flemish heritage
Yes,
from
definitely.
where you're from. But tell us a little bit about what growing up in that region was like and what that region means to France.
Mhm. So I'm from Lille. Lille is very like northern France, close
Hmm.
to the Belgian border. So what it was growing up over there. So Lille, it's a pretty big city, about 3 million people who live in Lille. So, and I had the chance to, like you said, grew up in a bakery. Basically, my dad is a baker. He owned bakery. He's a pastry chef too. So yeah, I had the chance to grow up and be like in this kind of environment. Always be around bakers and always be around pastry chef in Lille. So, like you say, we used to go in Belgium a lot because it's very very close by, 10-minute drive, and you are in Belgium, and it's very close. But in the same time, they have their own culture, and their own food scene too. So I had the chance to be able to just move from one to another, and also like at the border, also like we have a good marriage, between these two cultures. And they take some of the French recipe and make them their own, and we take some of the Belgian recipe, make a new one with it, I'll say. So I had the chance to grow up on that and try very nice Belgian waffle and Belgian fry.
Tell us a little bit about it. And my only way to sort of create a comparison is, growing up in the bakery of a German pastry chef, and,
Hmm.
and that was owned and operated by my parents. everything, and I appreciate it so much more today than perhaps I did when I was in it.
Hmm.
But everything revolved around the business, and we understood that, right? We knew that my father had a certain way that he had to work, right? He
Hmm.
would work through the evening to prepare the products for the guests in the morning,
Hmm.
and so the bakery was right below the flat that we lived in,
Hmm.
and so he would come up later in the afternoon and spend some time with us, and then would always go to bed a little bit earlier than us. So that was just part of. And then and Mondays the bakery was closed, so it was always exciting because on Sunday evenings, we had dinner together. He could stay up later,
Hmm.
and Monday was a day for him to relax and my mom to relax, and so I didn't know anything different. I always tell the story that I went to a Catholic school down the block, and my lunches consisted of fresh rye bread
Hmm.
and Black Forest torte and
Hmm.
some really beautiful items that I didn't appreciate at the time, but I'm so grateful for today. Was it similar to you growing up in the business with your family, with your father?
So yeah, we have a very similar story. So like my dad opened his first bakery when he was 18 years old. So I
Yeah.
was not here yet. So
Yeah,
yeah, it was
yeah.
it was one of the youngest baker at the time to open
Okay.
his bakery. He made it in national TV because it was very like odd for 18 years old boy to open his
Oh, I bet.
bakery.
I bet. Yeah.
So he opened that. So I always grew up in bakery, and like you said, so you live on the flat above the bakery. And me, it was just on the left side. I will say we have the kitchen. In the middle, we have my house, and on the right side, we had the store. So basically, we had a hallway just crossing the house to go from the kitchen to the store. So
So the
I
business
say
was always there, always part of
always
your
there,
life. Yeah,
always
yeah.
there, and exactly the same thing. We were closed on Monday, so Sunday like closed on Sunday afternoon and Monday. So Sunday after like 1 p.m. it was always exciting. Be like, all right, this is the weekend. Even if I go back
It
in
was
school
our weekend.
tomorrow,
Yeah,
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 it
a
was
hundred
like, oh,
percent. Yeah.
tomorrow is gonna be fun. So when we had vacations, stuff like that, it was always like our Monday, it's our weekend, and I knew that all my life. So as soon as I started working with him, but like you said, like I was around products, uh, baked good, like croissant and chocolate croissant and fresh baguette every day. And like you said, I think I appreciate it now more than ever
Yeah, yeah,
because I
yeah.
mean, for me, fresh croissant was like, yeah, whatever. I have this every day. I can go
Every
and pick it
day.
up.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
when my friend, when I was in school, come in the house, they were like, "Whoa, this is awesome! You can just pick a croissant like this." Like, yeah, whatever.
Or
So
donuts. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
everything was available. Florian, one of the things I remember the most were birthday cakes, right? Because,
Hmm.
my dad had the bakers in the business that's all they did was decorate cakes,
Hmm.
wedding cakes and birthday cakes and party cakes. And I can remember having spaceships on my cake and,
Hmm.
baseball fields and things like that. Again, I tell my children about it today, and it's hard to explain,
Hmm.
having experienced that and not being able to appreciate it in the moment. Do you feel, Chef, that environment for you? Because when I think about me, I don't know, I I don't know if I just always felt. My father always wanted me to be in this industry, always,
Hmm.
always hospitality, baking, front of the house, whatever it was. But I never really remembered like sitting down and sketching out my life plan. I just felt like it was in my blood, in my DNA.
Hmm.
Same for you. Did your father really push for you to be in this business?
So he never really pushed for me to be in this business, but like you say, your dad was like going bed a little earlier, and it was working. That's the good thing. Like it was working from home, if we can
Yeah,
call it
yeah,
this, from home.
essentially. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the only way I will say, like when I was a kid, to spend time with him, it was to go in a kitchen. So I spent a lot of time in a kitchen, young, like he was giving me a piece of dough and I was just playing with it. But it was the way that I was spending time with my dad basically because he was working 12, 13 hours a day. And like you say, like try to take a nap and try to get like some of our sleep between, schedule and early morning and late at night. So I spent a lot of time in this kitchen early on, and I never thought about doing anything else, to be honest.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
he never pushed me and told me right away, you sure you want to work on the weekend? You sure you want to work at night? The friend, they're gonna be like outside and having fun. You're gonna work, you're gonna have to go bed early. And I was like, yeah, I don't see the issue here. I learned that a little bit later when I was like 20. I was like, oh, maybe, but I was already have experience and I enjoyed so much. So yeah, same thing. I never thought about, okay, what I'm gonna do in my life. It was already like, I'm 100% sure I'm gonna do that. And I used to say when I was a kid, when teacher asked, hey, what do you want to do later? I was like, I'm gonna be like my dad, I'm gonna be a baker.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And it, not to make you blush, but I mean, it certainly shows when you're in the classroom, you have this, there's an ambiance when you walk in, the students hang
Mhm.
on your every word. But the real difference is that I love how you kind of you bring them in around you, and the
Mhm.
technique is an extension of your hands, and you have this knowledge that you genuinely love to pass on, right?
Mhm.
It's do this with me, right?
Yeah,
We're going to learn this, together. So and perhaps that goes all the way back to when you were young, that you had such a passion for it that it doesn't feel like work for you. Easy for your boss to say,
Mhm.
right? Yeah,
Uh-huh.
you're not really working, you're having fun.
What,
No,
why are you asking me?
you no, but um, you really demonstrate that
Mhm.
passion when you're in the classroom. So with that in mind, you trained at some of the most prestigious institutions in France and around the world, and you worked in these various places. It's pretty well known that any training in Europe, whether it's French pastry training or
Mhm.
cuisine or learning to make ice
Mhm.
cream, it's about discipline, it's about a sense of precision, it's about
Mhm.
rigor, it's a certain way of doing it, right?
Yeah.
Do you believe that experience, or I guess maybe I should ask it a different way, how did that experience,
Mhm.
training in that sort of way, influence not only your skills, chef, but your mindset as you progressed throughout your career? This idea of
Mhm.
there's a certain way of doing it. It's a precise way. There's a French
Mhm.
way of doing it. There's a
Yeah.
German way of doing it. Has this stayed with you throughout your career?
Yeah, I believe like you say in France we have this very excellent like training and like I think I went in school for 6 years in pastry school total. So I mean the first few years you have people that are like, oh, I like baking, I like baking in general, so it's doing that. But more you keep going and like more passionate, I would say you have to be, because now you're just training with only people who understand and are very, very passionate about baking and pastry in general. So when you move forward to your career and inside the training, I was saying France, I had classes of like three people, three students, and now they are one of the best pastry chefs, working in Dubai, working in Singapore. And this make you go forward, like talking about your patient with this kind of people, and you share exactly the same patient. That's what gave me kind of like the want to keep going and go a little higher,
Mhm.
because I mean, higher you go and harder it gets. But when, like I said, like when you have a group of people that they have the exact same patient with you and want to move forward, it make stuff easier, definitely.
You mentioned 6 years of school. Similar with, my father did the journeymanship first, is what they
Hmm.
called it in Germany. So that was 6 years where he had to be referred to go
Hmm.
from one property to the next, for whatever the amount of time was. And then the apprenticeship was a lot more formal.
Hmm.
That included not only the technique but the education, and he knew at an early age that he wanted to be, a master, what they call a
Hmm.
Meisterbrief in Germany. And it's interesting when I think about your 6 years of school, his 9 years of school. in America, if you go to school for 9 years, you're a doctor, and in Europe,
Yeah.
you're a baker.
Uh-huh.
He always knew that he wanted to come to America, but he also knew that he could work in a bakery in Germany
Mhm.
without the master. Um, but in order to own a bakery, that was his ultimate goal. In Germany, still today, you have to be what they call a
Ma-
Meisterbrief in order to own a bakery, right? And
Okay.
it's probably similar in France. I know they have the MOF, system
Mhm.
as well. Do you believe that um, there were some specific maybe moments, just like our students going through, there are moments
Mhm.
where kind of the lights go on or off, but were there
Mhm.
any moments or lessons from your apprenticeship, from your education that really resonated with you and defined you as a pastry chef today?
I think after a couple of years working with my dad, I started questioning myself, like, do I still want to do that? Like, you go through stuff in your life, and I was pretty young still, but I was like, let's put like pros and cons, like why I'm doing pastry and why I will stop. And definitely pastry and baking, the pros, the big pros for me was, well, you can take this skill and go anywhere in the world and do what you love. And that's what I was looking for. I was like, oh, if I become something else, another career, maybe I will not have the chance to do that. And this is why when I told basically my dad, all right, I'm going to change radically. I'm not going to work for you anymore. We've been spending too much time together. I love him, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
I was like, all right. So, and this is why I moved to Paris to be basically it was very like I type best pastry shop in Paris, got a list of 10, and I applied to all of them. And the third at the time, the third place replied to me. He was a Japanese chef, and he said, "Well, we don't hire French people. We take Japanese pastry chef, make them come in France, and they're just like this. So, but we have a big factory, 40 pastry chef, big kitchen, 40 pastry chef in Paris. Do you want a tour?" I was like, I can be here tomorrow morning. I drive tonight. I can be here tomorrow morning. It's just so interesting to see my dad's small bakery and 40 pastry chef working together, on the side. So I was like, yeah, sure. And I went there and we got a great connection. He asked me, when can you start? I'm like, let me find an apartment. The next day I'll be here. And this is how it all started.
That's wonderful. Yeah, such great memories. Throughout your education, I'm trying to think of our students as well.
Mhm.
You ended up working at Michelin-starred restaurants. Let's suffice it to say that there's a different sort of pressure, right? A different
Mhm.
sort of level of technique expected. How did your education prepare you, or did it, for that type of pressure where mistakes just can't happen?
So, I mean, with experience, you feel a little more confident.
Yeah.
And this is what I tell our students. I always tell them, just learn the basic, like learn how to make a beautiful vanilla tart, a
Mhm.
vanilla cake very nicely that you can't say anything about it. It's very good, very moist, well baked. The buttercream is great. After that, let's move on in something a little more difficult. And this is what I learned and move on. I acquire all this technique, and get better and better. So, um, I had the chance to work so at this restaurant and be chef de cuisine over there. And like I said, I had experience already, so I had a great team, and they followed me. And I think it's not because you are chef de cuisine that you cannot make mistake. I did probably make mistake, but as long as you have your team behind you that they trust you and you can show them, I think that's what I tell our students, like show them that you are capable of. Okay, and you gain the trust of your team, and that will make everything easier, and they will accept your mistake.
When I hear you speaking of working alongside your father and then needing to break away and go to Paris, it reminds me too of, I had such a great appreciation for the craft of baking and pastry,
Mhm.
but I was drawn to call it um, the cuisine side, right? A little more forgiving, perhaps a little bit more
Mhm.
creative My father hated that word,
Hmm.
creative, and um, but do you still today feel as a pastry chef that your what my father used to always love is the preparation. In order to
Hmm.
be a pastry chef, you will not create a wedding cake in one day.
Yeah, definitely.
You'll need to make your layers and then the next day then it all kind of he thrived on that organization and that building it together, whereas I was a lot more, in the moment. Is that part of your DNA as well? The mise en place, the preparation, the organization, and how difficult is that today to teach young people about that specific?
So, it's funny. My dad used to say, if you don't have a brain, you have leg. That means if you forget something in the freezer or in the fridge, you're gonna walk back there and get
You
it.
can get it.
So yeah, so this is how I learned mise en place. Like I was like, oh, I forget my whisk, come back, and oh, I forget the bowl, and I come back, and oh, I forget my cream,
Then
and
you're
so
exhausted. Yeah.
when you're exhausted, you're like, maybe I'll think a minute before going there and bring all my stuff. So, and it still kept going with me. Before Escoffier, I was in Chicago in this bakery, and I used to count how many steps a day I was doing, and how I could reduce this. Or instead
Yes.
of having the knife here, can I have it right in front of me? And like this, less movement, and I get like less tired. And something like, is it make sense to make this cake now, or have this preparation because I'm gonna need to go there at some point, bring it back. So yeah, I used to count my step just for that. So yeah, for me, mise en place, like I said, during we do a lot of demo for our student, and I always tell them, look at my mise en place. Like I'm here. The last thing I want, like you say, I put them like in circle in front of me, and the last thing I want is I don't want to be like, oh, give me a second, I'm gonna grab this, come back. Give me a second. So you need to think about this, and this is how I show them. You see, I'm doing the same thing that you do, that you're gonna do. I'm gonna do it in 10 minutes. You're gonna do it in 45, just because it take me 5 minutes to do my mise en place, but I have everything ready right on my table. Like, and I don't go anywhere.
Yeah, yeah. All these memories are coming to me listening to you talk. My father's um, sort of uniform in the kitchen was very traditional, baker's shirt with the apron over the head.
Mm-hmm.
And, the first time that I had an opportunity to work with a French chef, his name was Roland Hennon, and he was a master
Wow.
in the Northwest in Portland, Oregon. And I'll never forget, Chef. He had on this beautiful jacket, double breasted, and it was the first time I ever saw a beautiful flowing bistro apron. I couldn't see his
Mm-hmm.
shoes, right?
Yeah.
And we were working at this Hilton hotel in Portland, Oregon, and he pulled me aside and um, I think I destroyed a bunch of sausages or something. And so he pulled me aside and he let me know right at that point that the chef is always on stage. All
Mm-hmm.
eyes are on the chef. So you have to think about, like you just said, if you're going to move to the other side of the room to pick something up, you better think about everything
Mm-hmm.
that you need to pick up when you're on that, because you have to flow like you're on stage. You have to
Definitely.
flow through the kitchen gracefully because all eyes are on you. If you're darting back and forth, people will lose confidence in you,
Mm-hmm.
faith that you are in control. And those words have always stayed with me. To sometimes it's hard, right? Sometimes you do have to dart
Mm-hmm. That is.
across
Mm-hmm.
the kitchen, but this idea of all eyes, and in the restaurant industry today, it's really really popular to have open kitchens. So
That is.
so the guests can see what's happening. It's very interactive, and the last thing you want to see is things thrown in the kitchen or people running around. So yeah, I love that story. Can we jump over overseas and talk about what motivated you to, move to Tokyo and work so far away from home and maybe speak a little bit. Many of our students want to go abroad
Mm-hmm.
to experience, a new environment. But what was that like for you, and how did you adapt? You were so young high pressure, big environment, and
Mhm.
still, you're super, super young, away from home, the language, all of that.
It was opportunity, like I said, so I work with this Japanese chef a year in Paris, and basically what happened after a year, like, okay, well, what you want to do now? So I was like, I don't know, and he asked me, well, we have a kitchen in Tokyo in Japan. You want to go there? So I had to make a passport because I never traveled before this. So France to Japan, first trip, definitely a big trip. Arrived there, my English was very poor, couldn't even introduce myself in English. So I print, sheets of Japanese, like to say hi, hello, introduce myself in Japanese. I still have them today. I think I'm gonna frame them at some point
You should, you
because
should.
yeah, they are collector. So yeah, I was very young. I was 20 years old. Thankfully, like this chef, like took me under his wing. I was the first French chef that he hired. So now I hope he's taking still
And
French
how old are you
chef.
here? You're 18,
No,
19?
I was 20.
You're
Yeah,
20. You're
just
20. Okay.
barely 20 when I moved in Japan. I stayed a
Okay.
year and I came back. And basically because one of my best friend, he's a pastry chef too. We have very similar background. And he moved in Japan a year prior to me. And we had each other on phone. And it's like, it's crazy. Look, I'm doing, chocolate croissant in Tokyo. Like it's amazing. And so soon as I had the opportunity, I'm like, you know what, let's give it a shot. So of course it was very hard because Japanese food culture and also like work environment are very, very different than French. Even if in France it's pretty hard too. But Tokyo and Japan in general, it's harder than that. So, I
Sure.
arrived, like French attitude, like, hey, I'm gonna show you how to make croissant. Well, guess what? They knew how to make it and they didn't wait for me. So they even showed me how to make better croissant. So yeah, but it was awesome. So after a year of that, I came back to France and I start connecting with people in US and they're like, hey, do you want to move in US? I was like, well, it was a positive experience for me, Japan. So let's keep going. I was a little younger, no wife, no kid, nothing. So I was like, well, I just take my backpack and basically I go. So
Off you go. Yeah. Yeah. Before we get to the United States,
mhm,
another sort of serendipitous check, because, Chicago is where, my father's bakery was and
mhm,
where I lived. But before we get to that, I'm just curious as I think about students and
yeah,
the impact that you have on them, the I'm just curious how you approached the pressure, I'm going to use that word again,
mhm,
of maintaining such high standards translated into creating innovative menus. When did you know that you actually could start creating menus, and how do you encourage students to start thinking about that? Because while they're going to school, they're eager and they're super motivated, but they probably don't have the experience to be diving into, creating new menus. I'm just curious how you got into that, and how the pressure
mhm.
of what you were doing influenced those sorts of menus that you created.
Like I said, I think like I learned very nice basic recipe and very master them at the beginning. And this is why I try to tell the student every day, please master your recipe before you try to change the flavor, for example. And
Yes,
for
yes.
example, we have a couple of days at the end of the block four that we are doing plated dessert. And I love plated dessert because, like you said, I was chef de cuisine in a Michelin-starred restaurant. So this is my time to show off a little bit.
Sure, sure,
So
sure.
and every time they're like, oh, how you change this in this and how you make this? I was like, well, because I have this strong basic skill that now I can do a plated like this and I can move forward like this. So this is why I keep telling them. And during this, I think this time plated dessert, today that we have with students, I think it's eyes opening for them to be like, oh, okay, now I totally
It all comes
understand.
together. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And so, and same thing, like sometimes some students don't realize that I've done that a thousand times. When we
Yeah.
have macaron, they always macaron is not an easy product, and they're always a little frustrated when their macaron don't turn out well. And I tell them I probably make over 1 million macaron right now. So
Sure,
yes,
sure.
it's your first time making macaron. Is my 1 million and on. So just like practice, 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 and after
Perseverance.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, you can move on. So yeah, that's what
That's
I tell
such
them.
great advice. So let's talk about Chicago. What put you on the map in Chicago? You were the executive pastry chef at Little French Guy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So right before that, I was in Hong Kong. So I guess I
Right
was
before
an
Chicago.
yeah,
Okay.
right before Chicago. So basically, I went to Tokyo, moved to Washington D.C., moved back in Hong Kong, and I moved to Chicago.
I
So
didn't
yeah, I did.
realize you were in DC. Where were you in DC?
I was in a little bit underneath Washington D.C. in Virginia, in
In okay.
Blacksburg, Virginia. Yeah, I spent a
Oh,
year and a half over there. Yeah, I was
okay.
executive pastry chef in a big French bakery down there.
Yeah,
So it was
that's
my
great.
first time in US. Yeah, over
Yeah.
there. So
I was just in
uh,
DC this weekend. That's why it just perked my
oh,
interest
okay,
there.
okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
I love Washington D.C. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
very nice
Beautiful.
city.
Beautiful,
Yeah, and it's
beautiful
very
city.
European, kind of like almost
It,
French,
it feels
a
like
little bit.
Paris, right? It feels a little
Yes,
like Paris.
yes. I
Yeah.
think there is a story that somebody who built Paris built an avenue in Washington D.C. So it has
Oh,
the same
okay.
feeling. Yeah,
Makes sense. Yes,
yeah, it has the
yes,
same
yeah.
feeling.
Especially with
So,
the art and the architecture.
mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
So to come back to Chicago, I was in Hong Kong for 2.5 years and start to be burned out. It's a tough city, Hong Kong. Very small, like very small, crowded all the time, loud, and yeah, and so I have my friend over there that opened his bakery. And as you know, one of my goals is one day to open my own bakery. So that was, on my project. And I was like, I want to go back. So I spent a lot of time in this Michelin-star restaurant, high pressure, very high quality all the time, no mistake allowed. And it was great. It was great. But after a few years, I was like, "All right, I want to change environment. I want to change my routine. And yeah, so I found my friend that opened his bakery in Chicago and needed somebody with a good background, pretty solid to be able to pilot a team, take care of a team of a couple of bakers and pastry chefs. So yeah, we got in contact and I was like, all right, let's do it. And 3 weeks after, I moved to Chicago. So
Did you live in the city?
no, I lived in the suburb of Highland Park.
Highland Park. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
very
Chef,
nice
did
one.
you have to change your style yet again to adapt to the suburbs of Chicago, to the American market?
Definitely. I mean, in Hong Kong, we were flying melon from Japan every day to serve to our guests. So I did not do that in Island Park because it was $90 a melon. So
Yeah,
couldn't
yeah.
do that. Couldn't sell a tart at $24. So it was not possible. So yeah, of course, you have always like adapt and understand your clientele. And this is why I tell our students like how many times I go to a restaurant and it's nice brasserie food or very like simple burger food. And if I want a dessert, I want a brownie or a cookie with an ice cream. And you have this elaborated dessert that doesn't match, with the restaurant. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
this is how you have to adapt to your clientele and what they like, what they don't like, what they're gonna eat, and also price change. So yeah, of course, came back to more like basic pastry, more vanilla, more chocolate based pastry, and it was great. Mhm.
That's such good advice. Such good advice. This is an odd question because you're French, right? And that's where
Mhm.
your journey started. But I'm trying to think through the lens of a student, how important it is to seize opportunities around the world to develop their style.
Mhm.
Is it necessary? Is it preferred? For you, obviously, you embraced it. Um,
Mhm.
but how do you respond to students who want to know, should I go to Europe? Should I go to Asia?
I always tell them it's up to you. It's what you want to do. And like I said, there's nothing wrong to stay in a small bakery next door. You're gonna learn a lot too. But if you want to, come on, one day have a little more experience, be a little bit more open to the world, and and you can do it, I will say like it's the best experience you ever had in your life. And like I said, there is always good in bad. So even if you go over there for 6 months and it was not the best experience, you didn't very like the country or whatever the culture, it's always good in bad. So you'll come back with something that you might not realize right now, but you will realize this later, you know. And I'll say if this is what you want and I have connection, I can help you doing that if you want. So
Oh, so well said. You're going to make me cry. So
uh,
we're going to quote you there. We're going to quote you. And speaking of
mhm,
quotes, this is a quote from you, and we display this on our website uh, because you're an instructor here, and so proud to have you. But this is what you said. As a chef, I love helping others learn by promoting curiosity, welcoming questions, and embracing mistakes as part of the learning journey. I believe in working together, communicating openly, and providing personalized support to help people develop skills and achieve their aspirations. Absolutely beautiful. We didn't write that for you.
yeah.
You wrote that.
Hmm.
You wrote that. And so I'd love to talk a little bit more about um, you being an instructor here. And I could remember a few years ago kind of emailing back and forth with you, and you were
Hmm.
considering teaching. And was it always a dream, or was it a more recent aspiration that, wow, I have a gift and I can give this back to students? That's kind of the way. I'm not suggesting for a minute that I had a gift, but I loved the idea of
Hmm.
teaching. Many years ago when I first taught, I couldn't believe that I got paid to tell people what I knew. I couldn't
Hmm.
believe it. And it was something I was passionate about, food, right? The lessons I learned from my father and my mother, and and my experiences. But when it comes specifically to you, Florian, was it something that you always thought you might want to do, give back through teaching?
So you know, in our industry, like I always tell my students, like we have the chances within one career, we can work everything and everywhere. As a pastry chef, you can manage 10 people. You can be by yourself in your own business. You can own your business. You can work in a big bakery, small bakery, restaurant, high-end restaurant, hotel. So we have like a lot of plans, and we can be teaching. And like I said, I was fortunate in my career to do almost everything, see a little bit of everything, high-end restaurant, smaller hand, big bakery, and on and on. So teaching was always on my radar, you know. And when I was in school, you know, I mean, I admire my teacher because just everything they taught us and every small detail during the demo and on. And I was like, you know, if one day I have the opportunity to teach, I will take this opportunity definitely. And we met, and I had this opportunity, and definitely at the first few days, I was like, "Oh, that's incredible! I'm just talking, and they just say yes, you know." And like you say, like I'm bringing my passion here, and like I said, if they can get 1% of my whole bakery and baking passion, you know, I have accomplished my mission definitely.
Oh, yeah, well said. Well said. I know we've talked a little bit about the importance of foundation and learning the basics, and maybe even mastering, it's a big word, but mastering the recipe first before venturing out and becoming too innovative.
Mhm.
I'm curious, for students who are just at the beginning of their journey, let's say very young students that perhaps have very little experience, what is, just in general, it's a hard question, what's your philosophy of how to begin to build that foundation? It's one thing to have it, but
Mhm.
because disappointment is a big part of, someone who perhaps has done
Mhm.
pretty well in their parents' kitchen, or else, their first job, they've done a pretty good job. But then, the techniques become a lot more difficult in culinary school, and the expectations become higher. So the disappointment comes along with that. What's your philosophy and how to wean or temper, let's use a culinary term, temper students into that environment?
So, you know, the first few days with this kind of student brand new in a kitchen, you know, they walk in and they just like, They never seen a kitchen that big before.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I always tell them, well, I'm gonna tell you something. I'm not your mommy. I'm not your daddy. Everything you do at home, it's great and wonderful, and you are the best baker in the world. And I tell them, I'm a professional chef. We are professional chef. I'm gonna give you like professional background, and feedback. And like I said, I never. My philosophy is like I'm never gonna work against you. I'm not here for that. I'm gonna work with you, and everything I will tell you is to make you grow and get better at what you do. That's my only goal here. Is like you've done something that it didn't turn well, it burned, something like that. Like it's too dense, and I always gonna tell you, okay, this is what you need to do to improve this recipe or to do that. Like I'm never criticizing.
Do you, I was just thinking back, and I think it was February, end of January, February, you and your wife came and met Michel Escoffier. We had a
Yeah.
beautiful event
Mhm.
in downtown Boulder. And is there something really special for you growing up in France, having a spectacular career, and then landing at a culinary school with the Escoffier name? Is there something specifically rewarding about that?
Yeah, I mean, Escoffier, like I mean, in France is a legend, So
Sure,
having this on
sure.
my jacket and have my name right underneath, make me always proud. And like I said, like I have the passion of cooking and baking in general. So I always tell my students, like, look this up. You will see it come from far away, a long time ago. And like as we know, like the menu in the brigade right now. It's been invented by somebody, and this somebody is Auguste Escoffier. So yes, it's very like a proud moment for us and for me to be able to work with you.
Does your father still have his bakery in France?
So he sold it. Yeah, he
He
just
sold
sold
it.
it.
Good,
Yeah, he
good.
sold it, but he's working in this bakery now, just as kind of like a manager now. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Mhm.
That's the way to do it. That's the way he
Yeah,
keeps his
yeah,
passion
yeah.
going.
You
And
wanna, yeah, yeah. You wanna have 2 days off now, so this is the
there
way
you
to
go.
do it.
And and he's got the money in the bank account. That's
Hmm.
brilliant. That's brilliant. Are there I'm just curious, this is off the record. You've been with us now for a couple of years at Escoffier, and we're so proud and honored to have you, and the students love you. Are there any, like moments that are in your mind the most rewarding to you about being a teacher? Like that one moment that you would actually call your father and tell him about?
Yeah. So like we do a culmination at
Yeah.
the end of the block, at the end of the program. So basically, in pastry, most of the time the students make their own pastry buffet, and it's always rewarding to see their family walk in, and
Yeah. Yeah.
they know me, because students talk about me to their family, and I know their fiance, their husband by
Yeah.
name now, and I can put name on, faces now. They're like, oh, I know you by name. I know story about you, but I never met you. Now is the day. And, like just the smile on everybody's face on that day. I love that. They definitely like, and be like, okay. And, I got all the card and all, thanks and by the family and from the student. Like, that's very rewarding.
Just to talk about that culmination, I'm glad you brought that up. So culmination, it's the pinnacle of the student's experience while they're in school. And then they go out into the industry to do their externship. And then, of course, we encourage them to find gainful employment in this career that they've chosen. Um, I'll be the first to say that our culminations have risen to another level since you've been with us. And what I love the most
Thank you.
about watching you during those culminations is the presentation, the decorations, the thoughtfulness of the menu and the invitations that go out, and how proud the students are to create this display, right? And
Mhm.
we do the same thing for culinary, and I know that they're responsible for procuring the menu and ordering the food and actually executing under your watchful eye. But where I think you've really brought us to a different level is how important this is to their families. When those families walk in and the lights
Mhm.
are down and the lights are flickering, the little, bulbs are flickering above, and it's really about their food and their work. And there's tears, there's
Mhm.
laughter, there's good pastry. Yeah, so that's a really, that's special for me, and I
Mhm.
just want to, formally thank you for that.
No problem.
Chef, before we let you go, I appreciate the time. I know that you're itching to get
Yeah.
back to your class, but the name of the podcast is The Ultimate Dish, so I can't let you go until you tell me, in your mind, what
Mhm.
is, we'll say, the ultimate pastry.
What is the ultimate pastry? Well, I like a lemon tart, like a good lemon tart, nice,
Oh,
yeah, nice crust, a nice lemon curd with a little bit of acidity and the smoothness of like meringue on top. And it can be done so many way. With also other citrus food, like used to make yuzu tart, and
yeah, 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 yeah.
that's yeah, very, very nice. I love a lemon tart, a good
That's
lemon tart, well
that's the
done. Yeah.
first time anyone has brought that up. I love
All
that.
right.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting something a little different, but
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Simple,
That's
good
a
lemon tart. Yeah.
yes, lemon tart. Chef, thank you so much for spending some
Yeah,
time
of
with us.
course.
Thank you for everything you do, and I'll see you in just a few moments.
Yeah, I'll pass right in front. I'll see you. Bye
Yeah,
bye.
merci, merci. Thank you for listening to the Ultimate Dish Podcast, brought to you by Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. Visit escoffier.edu/podcast to find any materials mentioned during the podcast, including notes, links, and other resources. And if you can, please leave us a rating on Apple or Spotify and subscribe to support our show. This helps us reach more aspiring individuals ready to take the next step toward their dream careers. Thanks for listening.